When we look at the Mount Sinai story, there's a wonderful midrash, a piece of rabbinic literature, which talks about the fact that Mount Sinai was a unique event, that God did something never to be done any time from the past to the future in history. And he even says so in the book of Deuteronomy, that he reveals himself to an entire nation. And the reason why that was done was for one point and one point alone. Because the essence of the Torah is, the idea behind the Torah is that there's a God who dictates laws to Moses. But how did the Jewish people know that it's not just Moses who's making it up? You know, like the Wizard of Oz, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So for one unique moment in human history, God puts Moses aside and allows the entire Jewish people to have really an artificial high, a spiritual high, to elevate them all to prophecy so they can hear him speak, so that they know from now on, when Moses speaks, it's me, God, speaking through Moses. He's the scribe, but I'm the author. But it's a fascinating story that the rabbis bring down, that when the Jewish people heard God speak, he wanted to give them the whole 10 Commandments, but they only heard the first 2. I am God, don't believe in any others. And then it says they died. What does it mean they died? They died of fright? But we understand it's a beautiful concept. Prophecy is a state that's achieved when a person controls their mind and their body to the extent that they can break through the veneer of what we perceive to be reality and enter a higher plane of cognizance. That requires an incredible amount of work. A great example, but very mundane, is how can some countries like Mexicans eat spicy peppers and like an English person thinks pepper is spicy? The difference is that Mexican has been eating these hot tamales his entire life. He's desensitized himself to it. So if you were to give him something hot, he doesn't even notice. Give an English person something like that, ooh-ah, 15 gallons of water they got to drink. Moses had earned the right to be the greatest prophet in history, but the Jewish people hadn't. They just came. They were slaves in Egypt. God takes us to Mount Sinai, and if we go back to the analogy about the food, to enable us to have prophecy, it's sort of like giving the British guy a shot of Novocaine. Suddenly his taste buds go dead. And he's able to eat the hot peppers, but he's really not experiencing it. So too the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, God elevates them artificially up to the level really where Moses is at. They can hear God speak. But then the experience proves far too intense. It's sort of like the Novocaine wearing off, and suddenly, wow. And the rabbis teach that, before we're born, we're pure souls. We don't want to be in a physical body. We want to be hanging out with the spiritual in heaven. So it says that we're put in the body kicking and screaming. And then we spend our entire life, 70, 80, 120 years, we become a body, and then we have to be dragged out kicking and screaming. To the extent that a person lives as a soul, it's easier to disconnect from the body. But that's what happens to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, we have this incredibly intense experience. And the soul says, I don't want to be in this body. I want to be with God. So they all had to leave the bodies because they wanted to be with the infinite, and therefore physically, forcibly put back in those bodies so they can continue the process and experience the rest of Revelation.